All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us this evening. A very important topic, especially here in Alpine County as it relates to living with bears and not living against bears. So joining us today, we have the regional biologist for Alpine County, Shelly Blair. And Shelly is going to provide us a presentation. And then we can go ahead and get some questions. So I will say, if you do have some questions, just go ahead and either put them in the chat or hold them until the end and a simple hand up, and we'll be able to select you to provide any question that you might have. We ask that the questions be related specifically to the presentation. And I am just going to make Shelly the host here, and then we will go ahead and get started. Shelly, you good?
Yep, we're good. And everybody.
All right.
Okay. So this is a presentation take 2, right? Thank you so much for allowing me to be here. I am talking about something that's near and dear to my heart. So I'm going to go ahead and try to share my screen here and start the presentation. All right. Just wanted to make sure that everybody can see it okay. Maybe JT can confirm that. Are you guys seeing this? Okay, cool. Okay, yeah, so again, my name is Shelly Blair. I'm a wildlife biologist with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. I'm the unit biologist for El Dorado and Alpine counties. So basically my job is all wildlife management issues within those 2 counties. This is my contact information that will be available to anybody in case you have more questions after this presentation is over. So, so yeah, I am going to go ahead and get started. And just real quick, JT, so there's things popping up of people wanting to come into the meeting. And I don't know if because I'm the host now, if I have to allow them in now or what, how that's going to work.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I was trying to put it in the chat, but yeah, I think at this point in time, if you do feel comfortable allowing them in, they will be muted upon entry. So, you know, if folks, you know, we're trying to do any funny business, they will be muted and unable to speak. So I would say allow them in, and then maybe at the end of the presentation, just keep in mind to turn host back over to me, and then we can go into the Q&A.
Okay, great. Thanks.
And one final thing is, if you do have any questions, just you'll have to unmute me and then I'll be able to answer them. Sorry about that, Shelly.
Oh, that's okay. That's fine. So there's a bunch of people coming in. So yeah. All right. So yeah, so I'm just gonna keep moving forward. All right. Okay. Just making sure my presentation is going to work here. To begin with, there's a lot of kind of confusion about what kind of bears we do have. We only have black bears in California. A lot of people see brown colored bears and think that they're grizzly bears. We do not have grizzly bears in California. We only have black bears, and they range from color to black to brown to cinnamon to blonde. So this kind of gives you an idea of the differences in the types of coloration in the bears. So eating habits of bears, black bears are omnivores, which means they eat basically everything, anything that's edible or smelly. A wild bear's diet consists of grass and berries, plants, nuts, roots, honey, insects, larvae, fish, carrion, and small to medium-sized mammals. So they eat a lot of different things. They actually, something that's interesting about bears is majority of the year, their diet consists solely of grasses because that's all that's available to them. So a large animal is trying to get a lot of calories by just basically grazing. Unfortunately, urban bears mainly feed on human foods like garbage, and this makes their teeth rotten and makes them unnaturally obese. So on this side of the picture, there's a picture of a bear that's fairly young but has really rotten teeth. And then this is a photograph of some scat that just has trash in it. So they eat even the paper product with that trash. So that's obviously not good for their digestive system either. Winter denning is used in winter for what I say in quotations, hibernation, but black bears don't really go into true hibernation. They go into something which is called torpor, which is kind of a modified hibernation. So their metabolism does slow down and they do sleep a lot during the winter. And they also den to give birth to their young, but they do wake up during the winter time and come out and walk around. So so that's kind of a misconception that bears are always sleeping all throughout the winter, and that's just not the case. So if you see a bear walking around in the middle of winter, it's not unusual. A normal, natural wild bear's den usually consists of hollow logs, brush piles, rock caves. They're amazing what they can fit into small spaces. They will use the same den repeatedly. And unfortunately, our urban bears, they will utilize unsecured crawl spaces in resident properties. So even though this isn't quite an issue in Alpine County yet, in Tahoe, we have a lot of bears that are denning under houses and causing a lot of damage under houses. So we just want to encourage people to secure crawl spaces, including under decks and everything. We just don't want bears to be in and around houses where they can end up getting into trouble. So then bears are smart. Bears are very intelligent. They have 7 times the smell power of a bloodhound. They can smell things miles away. And they learn to modify their natural behaviors and can remember where possible food sources are. So they know if they've gotten food at a campsite to come back to that campsite. If they've gotten a food reward in a vehicle, they know that vehicles can produce food, and also your home. So they learn this behavior. They learn very quickly how to access these things, and they continue to do so. So the California black bear range is large, and it is expanding. We believe that bear populations are increasing. Bears, everybody asks, like, how many bears are in California? And our population estimates are usually based upon hunter harvest data that we have. So our department and other research people are trying to figure out better ways to get a more significant understanding about bear populations in California. We do know they're expanding because we're seeing bears at lower elevations we've never seen before. So this area where the Central Valley, where it says that's not really where bear range is, we're seeing bears in those areas too. So we know they're expanding, and people are seeing more bears in the wild when they're recreating in different capacities too. So to be successful with human bear management and avoid conflict, it's really important to understand the factors that lead to bear incidents. So these are all different photographs of factors that cause bear conflict. So there's open dumpsters that these little ones are able to access. Even if we have bear-proof containers, either people don't understand how to utilize them or they become overflowing and then people leave their trash besides them. So these are just a few examples about factors that are leading to bear conflict incidents. And this is what we're trying to avoid. So human-bear interactions often result in changes in the bear's natural behavior. So a bear accesses food and then nothing happens to it. So nobody's yelling at it or screaming at it or giving it a negative response. So they start to learn this behavior of humans not being scary anymore. And this is an old photograph, but this is absolutely what we want to avoid, because these animals are still wild animals and we don't want to make anyone think that this is okay to approach a bear like this. So why is this important to understand? These are a few photos of why it's important to understand. And if you've had any of this happen to you, you understand how devastating it can be. This picture right here is of a vehicle that a bear got into and just completely destroyed. It probably got caught in that vehicle, so they are able to open the vehicle and then get into it. And then if it shuts behind them, then they try to get out and really cause a lot of damage to vehicles. But even when you're camping, it could ruin your camping trip because they can get all of the food that you've brought to eat during that trip. So, so this is why it's important to understand this. So humans equal a food source, and bears that access human food without adverse consequences become human food conditioned. So this is an animal that was on Kings Beach. It had been food conditioned and then became habituated, and you can see that it does not care at all that all these people are here. This was a birthday party that was happening. The bear came up and approached the picnic table, and everybody ran away from it and started taking photographs, and this gentleman here decided to sit next to it and watch it eat the birthday cake. So this is stuff that we really want to avoid. These are wild animals. If this bear felt threatened, it could potentially injure someone. So but we want this animal to not behave like this, and this is how we discourage that from happening. So I'm gonna sit here for a little bit because I think this is a really, really important slide. This is kind of the bear behavioral ladder of progression, and this is really important to understand because we as humans have the ability to stop this ladder of progression. So on the bear side, which is this orange side here, I'm going to kind of go through this scenario. So this bear smells something interesting, follows its nose to people. Food smells good, but people might be dangerous, so they wait until dark to explore. So then they gobble up birdseed on the ground, knock down a feeder, eat lots more, and run back to the woods. They come back a few nights later, feeder is full again, and they chow down and follow nose onto the deck. Jackpot. Find garbage by the back door, open, scatter, and eat. Score a day's worth of calories. Plan to return often to this newfound bonanza. Amble back into the woods. The next one is explore the neighborhood. Get much fatter, much faster than you could foraging in the woods. Then they start coming during the day since food supply seems endless and humans appear to be harmless. Then they find an open garage. They knock over a refrigerator. They eat the pizza and the ice cream. They score a week's worth of calories in that one sitting. They do enough damage to get reported and make the news. Then they start approaching people, looking for food, getting trapped and ear tagged and hauled away. Then they find their way back. Yummy treats are still there. They pick up where they left off. Then they come and they scare someone putting out the trash. They get labeled a threat to human safety. They get killed way before their time. And that makes room for another bear that smells something interesting. So you can see this ladder of progression that's happening. This bear did not have a negative consequence to its initial food that it acquired. So, so we want this to stop right here. We don't want attractants in our homes and anywhere in our yards. We want to discourage that. And if a bear comes onto your property, you want to make sure that you are giving it a very negative experience and making it very scary for that bear to want to come back to try to get more. So prevention is the key. It's all up to us. We can all prevent bears from becoming habituated. I'm going to use this as kind of an example. This is the Tahoe Keys did a bear management plan a few years ago. It is brilliant. It's wonderful. It talks about not having fruit trees. It talks about putting out your trash early in the morning. You know, not allowing bears to be under your houses. This is the main thing with the problem with this management plan. In it, it says that single family homeowners are encouraged to use bear-proof design trash containers for storage and garbage. And it also states that no standalone garbage storage structures are authorized, like bear boxes. So they don't even allow bear boxes. So this is a problem because the bears have become habituated to getting trash. So even if you're leaving your trash out early in the morning, these bears know that. They're active all throughout the day, 24/7. So they're accessing trash regularly in this neighborhood. And when you're just encouraging something, people aren't going to follow through with that action unless there's some consequences to that. And hopefully the consequences, the bears rummaging through their trash and maybe destroying stuff, but we don't want that to happen. We want to stop that beforehand. So really this management plan would be perfect if it said that they required bear-proof containers for this area. So how do we prevent this? In Alpine County, we have to create and possibly require preventative measures. So education is really key. There's a lot of people that are recreating in the wild and moving up to rural areas that have no idea what they're getting into as far as wildlife. So it's really important that we have outreach education and really discuss these preventative measures, because we want to stop the problem before it happens. So this picture here, I've put in here, this is from state parks, and we've kind of are trying to desperately tap into the heartstrings of people and let people know how their actions are affecting their animals. So people go to Tahoe and they don't even think about this. They come to Alpine County, they don't even think about this. But if they're not putting away their trash correctly and keeping the dumpsters locked, then we've state parks has placed this picture of this the rotten teeth and the damage that it does to these animals when they actually access this stuff. It's just not good for our wildlife. And most people that are recreating in the wild, they want to see wildlife. They want to see healthy wildlife. And we want to see wildlife acting wild. So this is just an example of some things that we have been trying in the Tahoe Basin area. So the other thing that I found throughout my career is that enforcing the rules is key. Consequences change human behavior. So you can have all of the codes and legislation and laws, but if those things are not enforced, then people just ignore them. So in Alpine County, they do have a code section that says no person shall feed bears or knowingly leave food, food product, refuge, pet food, grain, or salt in a manner which constitutes a lure, attraction, or enticement to bears. And in my mind, this could even include bird seed, bird feeders. Bears are attracted to that. Anything like that, barbecues that are not cleaned. Anything that you could think of that a bear might smell a long ways away could potentially attract a bear. So the other thing that we're really encouraging local jurisdictions to do is coordinate with their local disposal companies. The El Dorado disposal, I just found out, it works in Placerville area and Pollock Pines. They just put out a new program to get bear-proof canisters. We have a lot of neighborhoods that are continually hit by bears because bears know when trash day is. Again, they're very, very smart. So they are, every trash day, they're coming through those same neighborhoods and accessing this trash. And that behavior is not going to stop. It's not going to be corrected until there's no food that they can access anymore and they're forced to go forage in the wild again. So I believe that Markleeville and Woodford's has the Douglas Disposal and Recycling Services. So I really encourage people to, or the local jurisdictions to coordinate with this and possibly getting bear-proof canister options. So there's loan programs in different companies and where people can lease and buy. Also requiring more frequent pickups during high use seasons. So one of the complaints I usually get in Markleeville is when there's a lot of tourism happening, the dumpsters get full, they start overflowing, the pickups aren't frequent enough. So then we have bear issues. And again, it takes one time for a bear to access that, and then it will continue to return to the area and try to get a really quick food source. This is an interesting development. So this new challenge we have as bear managers is that beginning in 2022, SB 1383 requires every jurisdiction to provide organic waste collection services. So this is compost. So now we have compost that's going to be set out at each person's house. So the reason why this is challenging is because now bears don't really have to rummage through trash to get food. It'll just be all supplied in one big bucket for them. So bear managers are really trying to wrap their brain around how to deal with this. I don't think this was considered when this bill was passed, but we do need to think about this because this could be a huge problem for our wildlife, not just bears, but every wildlife that could potentially access food. So it's really important for public information to get out there. All homeowners and visitors should be getting this information. So if you have VRBOs or Airbnbs or any kind of rental, this stuff should be highlighted for every visitor coming into the county. So some of the things that these brochures cover is if you find a bear in your home, get out of its way and call 911. Never block a bear's exit. Black bears are typically not aggressive animals. They are actually, very, very calm in most situations. But if they feel threatened or nervous, they will swipe and hurt individuals. So, so you never want to block a bear when it's trying to exit a home. If you have a bear in your home, get into a bedroom where you're safe, or a bathroom, and call 911 and have someone come and safely remove that animal from your house. If a bear is in your yard and at a safe distance, make noises and yell at it to encourage it to leave your property. This is a huge problem too, because bears come onto the property. I have a lot of videos in the basin where there's bears on the property, there's people inside the house, and they're laughing and they're videoing the bear and they're saying how cute it is while it's on their picnic tables getting all their food. This is not the behavior that we want. We want loud yelling, screaming, get the heck out of here, bear. You're not welcome here. It's not cute for a bear to come on to your deck while you're having lunch and take your food. So again, we want these bears to be trained to have negative consequences to this behavior. And again, we would never ask somebody to be unsafe while doing that. But if you're at a safe distance and you're able to bang pots and pans to get that bear off your property, that's going to be ideal. You always want to avoid getting between a sow and her cubs, or a bear and a food source. So I've had reports of people trying to defend their camping supply of food where they chase the bear that has their peanut butter container or their big tri-tip steak. This is not a good idea. So if that bear gets that food, let it have the food. Don't get in between that. And if you're attacked by a bear, which is extremely rare for black bears, you always want to fight back. Don't play dead. So other things that you need to do is you always need to store food and trash in locked bear resistant bins. Obviously, in some areas, a lot of people don't have locked bear resistant containers. So this is something we want to encourage. If you are able to purchase something like this and your refuge company can pick it up, then that's obviously what we want to happen there. Never feed wildlife. It's actually illegal to feed big game, and it's a death sentence for the animal. So just an example of this is, with the fires, we had a lot of construction crews and utility crews and fire crews in the area. And unfortunately, what they would do is they would see all sorts of wildlife, and they would feel sorry for these animals and start feeding it, but feeding it like, snacks that they had in their trucks. This is absolutely a death sentence for these animals. They do not need our handouts. They need our respect. So this was a huge problem, and those bears just kept approaching people after this happened, and we just don't want that to happen. So please don't feed wildlife. They don't need our help. Wildlife is extremely resilient. They know how to find the resources that they need. They do not need human intervention. You also want to keep your yards clean. Do not have bird feeders out or hang away from the home high in a tree, like way out on a branch, or keep them only seasonally. And ultimately, if you live in bear country, it's probably not a good idea to have bird feeders. That is a huge attractant, not just hummingbird feeders, but just regular bird feeders too. Do not leave food unattended. And so if you're outside eating, and you go inside or leave the area, it's just not a good idea. If there's a bear in the area and they smell the food, they will come in and get it. You want to keep doors and windows closed and locked if the home is unoccupied, so that they can't gain access. And don't leave food on the counters with windows open and then leave the area, because if there's a bear in the area and they smell it, they could potentially come in and get that. You want to clean all your ovens and barbecues and your countertops. Close window coverings when you leave the home, because bears are very visual. They can see into vehicles, and they have learned what to look for. So even in homes, they know that a big rectangular white box means food. So some bears will learn to look in windows. So if you are leaving your home for long periods of time, we recommend that you use shutters or you use curtains. do not confront, approach, bait, or chase a bear. And so I say no to bear selfies, because there are people that are just thrilled by having a wildlife sighting, but you don't want to approach a bear or try to chase it to get a picture with it. We know people that have done this, and it's just not good for the animals and not safe for the person. And then do not block the bear's exit route. And this is really big. Never become complacent just because a bear hasn't been around for a while. So I know there's a lot of people and neighborhoods that they, have an issue and it's a problem, and then this bear goes down for the winter, and then springtime comes, the bear hasn't showed up. It takes one individual to become complacent and not do what they need to do, and the bear comes in and access food, and then you start the cycle all over again. So it really takes the whole community to just remain vigilant and not become complacent. Dang it, it's not forwarding. Oh, there it goes. Hold on. Okay. All right. Again, wild animals don't need your handouts, they need your respect. So we all need to be bear aware. So I just want to reiterate that messaging. So we do in California have a depredation policy. So the American black bear lives in Alpine County and has conflicts with people where bear access human food and trash. And once a bear has become a destructive nuisance, it usually has to be euthanized. A lot of times that behavior cannot be corrected. And again, going back to that bear behavioral ladder, this could be completely avoided if people were just vigilant and doing their part to make sure that a bear doesn't reach this point. So we have a depredation policy for managing nuisance bears. And this is a process that kind of is the very end result. We try to educate people on how to deter bear conflicts, and but there are definitely some animals that continue the behavior and will continue to do damage because that's what they've been able to do. So what we ask is, when you're reporting bear incidents, we want timely reporting of interactions, and this website here is how you would report an incident to our database. And this emails our human wildlife conflict biologists so that they can document what's happening and also get in touch with you to get more information. So we really want good communication and info sharing with our department, because we also like to document behavior and to see what's happening. So usually when there's some hot spots in an area, we are documenting how many times this bear is in a house, or how many times the law enforcement has been called, and how many times the bears have been hazed, and what its behavior is after hazing. So we really, really like documentation of this so that we can better make a more informed decision about the outcome of the animal, and also just what humans have done to contribute to that. So if damage has occurred, you would contact our department and officially request a depredation permit. We have a human wildlife conflict line. We have a new wildlife conflict program, which has 2 biologists and 2 scientific aides that help with that. And they answer this line to try to assist members of the public with their issue. The other thing is that so what happens is the staff, our fish and wildlife staff is called. They do a site visit to verify damage. They issue a permit once they can verify that damage. That permit basically authorizes the property owner to euthanize the animal. They have authorization to euthanize it themselves, or they can have a county trapper assist them in that. Then the bear is trapped and euthanized, and then the carcass is reported. So we do not relocate conflict bears, and these are the reasons why. Bears are almost always travel back to original capture locations. We attempted to relocate a few bears this year from the Tahoe Basin, and within a week, they traveled over 70 miles to return to their same location. So that's one thing, is it just doesn't work. They usually come back if they're adult bears. Moving a problem somewhere else only moves the problem to a different location. So that's something to consider, is that if there's a bear that has been habituated, then there's not a whole lot that can be done to change that bear's behavior. It will continue to try to seek that same type of food. Moving a bear into another bear's territory is what's happening. So we have bears all over the place, and it is, yeah, you're putting a bear into another bear's habitat, basically. So they're competing for resources within that habitat. So you have to understand how, when you're moving a wild animal from one place to another, how you're affecting the ecology of the area that you're moving it to. There's a lot of moving parts on a landscape, and so we always have to consider that as well. And then also there's a potential to move disease into another population. So there may be an introduction to disease in one population, and we do not want to spread that all over the place in other areas. So that's another reason why we really do not like to relocate animals. This is something that I hope that you all keep in your brain, that a fed bear is a dead bear, and how important it is to work together to keep them wild. That is our ultimate goal here. So I have a video that I'd like to share with you. Just as it's kind of the way that the persistence that a bear has in trying to get access a vehicle. So this just tells you how smart they are and how persistent they are. So I'm hoping that this video works. Okay, so I hope you guys were able to see that video, because it just, like I said, shows the persistence of an animal to try to access food. There was obviously something that that animal smelled in that vehicle and wanted to get to it. So yeah, so that's why it's so important to just be really diligent about not leaving food in your vehicles as well. So and now I will take questions. I'm going to stop sharing. And then let's see. I'm not sure how to give you back the host.
Perfect. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry.
All right. So if you just click on my little thumbnail, there should be 3 dots on the right. If you click that.
Yep, got it. Okay.
Perfect.
All right, cool.
Awesome. So thank you very much. It's funny living in, I lived in the Tahoe Basin for 15 years and now down in the Valley area for the last 3. And you think you know everything about bears, but I found this an incredible presentation and did learn quite a bit. And so first and foremost, we did have one write-in question in the chat. And I would encourage everybody just to keep those questions coming in the chat, because I think it'll allow us to progress through this without too much interruption. So the first question comes from Arlene, and she says, if we do not or cannot have a bear box, can you recommend how to store trash before garbage day pickup? And the follow-up question to that is, what do you think of bear-proof garbage cans?
Yeah, so if you can't access a bear-proof canister, the recommendation is to use Pine Sol or ammonia around your trash cans. That can be a deterrent, but unfortunately some bears don't care about that. They will power right through that and still try to get into your trash. The other thing that's recommended is, perishables. If you freeze those perishables and then put them out like the morning of trash pickup, it doesn't emit as much smell. And then you're rinsing out all of the cans and all the stuff. So you're trying to get as much of that smell out of the garbage as possible. It's a little bit more work, but that's one thing that you can do. And then you can put it in a locked shed or your garage. But like I said, those bears are going to smell stuff. So then you run the risk of those bears trying to access that shed or that locked garage. So there's a few things you can do. Ultimately, a bear-proof canister is the most ideal situation.
All right, thank you very much. And it looks like one of our supervisors, Mr. Hames, or Supervisor Hames, has his hand raised. So I'm just going to ask him to unmute and give him an opportunity to ask a question. Then we'll go back to the written in questions in the chat.
Okay.
So I'm asking him to unmute.
Successful, I think.
I think we're good.
Thank you, Shelley. This is so important for the people to get this information out that we tried to get before. You and I have had conversations over the years about this, and now that we have the post-fire, do you think everything that we've talked about is exasperated because now the food source for the bears' normal food sources is now being directed almost exclusively to humans? I'm sure on the Caldor fire, you're having even more of a problem in some of the areas because the bears don't. I can't remember the word that they don't hibernate. What's the word again?
Torpor.
Torpor.
Yeah.
Okay, they don't torpor as long over there. And then leading on to the next question, of course, our torpor will probably be ending pretty quick if we have another couple of weeks of dry, warm weather. They will start to come out, which leads me to the question, of course, gestation period is how long? So I'm sorry I added all these questions all at one time.
Okay. So your first question is about the fires and how that affected the animals. So I think when the initial fires happened, the animals were definitely dispersed. And then the thing that happens is most wild animals kind of adapt and they move into different areas where there is more food. When they're moving into areas where they're getting human food though, then that is creating the problem. Then you have that whole behavioral ladder that I was talking about happening. So dispersed bears from the fire that aren't around urban areas are going to just kind of look for food elsewhere and disperse themselves. And a lot of times we've had collared animals in the middle of a fire and you see their movements within the fire. They kind of hit those meadow areas and springs when the fire is going over them. And then they just utilize the area still. So like I said, bears are wildlife in general is very resilient. So yes, the fires can compound situations if people in the surrounding areas are not very diligent about their food storage, if that makes sense. That's when you create a problem. So there was probably some bears that came down into like the Markleyville area, and they started accessing foods because people weren't used to bears being around and that many bears. And people were evacuated, and then they came back and they had all of this refrigerator stuff that was rotten, and they had to dump all that. So I think that just all compounds the issue. So that's why we're trying to get some more literature out there and education and outreach material to talk about some of these things as far as that goes. Nature has a way of balancing itself. I think when people get all messed up in it just messes the balance up. So I think that's more of the issue than the fires themselves. Your next question. Remind me.
The shorter torpor.
Yes. So the hibernation of the torpor is more triggered by food availability. So a bear will wake up, kind of look around. There's not, there may be snow still on the ground that's covering, the grasses and the bushes that they can eat, and so they will probably just go back in the den and go back to sleep. The little babies are being born as we speak, and they will probably start emerging around April, probably March, April. Sows, which are female bears, are gonna be kind of denning because they're giving birth to those babies. Bears typically only have new young every other year because their yearlings stay with them up to 18 months. So they kick out their yearlings. The yearlings usually den with them, and then they kick them out to have their new babies. That whole behavior is kind of food driven. And so, once spring comes, the snow starts melting, the grasses start coming up. That's when the bears are going to be out and grazing. And like I said, for majority of the year, they're grazing on grass alone until berries start to come, available, and they can go root around in old logs and get grubs and stuff like that. So yes, I hope that answers your question.
It did. Thank you so much. I'll save more questions for later. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Supervisor Hain. So we do have a couple more that were placed in the chat. So I just want to give a couple more questions to these folks, and then also encouraging anybody else that has some additional questions, please feel free to put those in the chat. The next question comes from Philip Bellman, and it is, why is there a move to expand bear hunting?
So bears don't really have any predators other than vehicles. And so hunting is a really valuable tool to manage the bear population in California. And that's part of the reason why they're looking into that. So we have a mechanism here in California where we issue bear tags, and then it is a quota of 1,700 bears killed, or the end of season, which is December 31st. And in the past few years, we have not met that quota. And again, this is a really important management tool, because if you have an overpopulated bear situation, then you start reaching what we call carrying capacity. So there's not enough resource for the animals to really thrive. And either we have more conflict situations, or bears, they start becoming diseased. And we're actually seeing a couple of different things happening with bears, as far as we've discovered this encephalitis in bears, which we don't know what's really causing it, but we're seeing a lot more malnourished yearlings. So yearlings should be like between 80 and 100 pounds, and we're seeing animals that are like 20, 25 pounds. And these are animals that are failing to thrive, basically. There's just a lot of animals on the landscape. So again, bear hunting is a huge management tool. Bears also, they've been known to kill fawns, so they affect deer populations and other ungulate populations for recruitment. And they also will scavenge on mountain lion kills, which creates a problem, because then the mountain lion has to kill another deer. So we're seeing a little bit of an influence on our prey populations because of the bear populations that are expanding. So I know recently there's been some news articles about bears are in trouble, but as a biologist, I don't believe that is true. I think there's just from what I've seen in my areas, especially, that the bear populations are pretty big, and we're seeing them expand into areas we've never seen them before. So again, hunting is a really important management tool, and that's why that's happening.
All right. Thank you very much for that response. And thank you for the question. We got another question in the chat. Well, this is more of a comment from Coop or Coop E. Thank you very much. I would love to see this presentation given to all visitors, VRBO, Airbnb, motel, hotel, campers, etc. Not sure how logistically possible it would be. Of course, signage everywhere. But I do think that there's a question that stems off that. And is there currently an active effort to engage these types of operators when it comes to proper, bear awareness?
Yeah, so a few agencies, there's the Forest Service, the state parks, and TRPA, our department. We have a bear working group because we realize the importance of this, and we're trying to get consistent messaging out there. And like I said, we're working with all different agencies to try to figure out how best to do that. I think I mentioned in my presentation that we're trying to do outreach now for contractors, because there's a lot of contractors coming to these areas and they just have no idea like that there's this issue, and they're leaving food in their vehicles while they're working on the job site, and it's creating an issue, right? So there's a lot of different things that we need to do to get this outreach to these different facets in order to really help people understand. We're working all different avenues of it. We're trying to get the Caltrans billboards, like as people are traveling into the basin areas. And I know Alpine County's getting increased recreation. And so we're trying to get road signs during really busy times of the year, you know, a fed bear is a dead bear, or please secure your food, or any kind of messaging that we can get out there to people. We're trying to message in the larger cities where people are coming from. VRBOs and Airbnbs, we've had a little pushback on some of those things because they don't want to scare people from utilizing those places. So they don't want to put a bunch of stuff out there about scary bears and the potential to come in contact with them. But I think that that's changing, that's shifting. So yes, we are committed to working together to get this information, and because it's very important.
Yeah, and you know what? I didn't even consider going at the source in those larger population environments to get that communication out. I think that is a great value to the communication efforts to get them before they get here instead of after they've arrived. So I have one more question that is in the chat, and then we'll just kind of give another, and then I have a specific question too. So the question in the chat was from 2G, and it is, can we hope to see a trap, tag, and hazed program continued?
Yes, so he is referring to a management tool that we started using about 3 years ago. I think we started in 2019. The situation is that you know, there's a lot of bears. There's, you know, a high density of bears, especially in the Tahoe Basin. But those Tahoe Basin bears are expanding into Alpine County, so you're seeing some of those bears come into your county. But so we started a program where we're trapping animals that we don't know any kind of history about them, but we are tagging them with ear tags, and we're hoping to get some collars on them so we can get some movement data as well. But right now we have tags on some of those animals so that we can positively identify who is who. And it's been a really interesting process to see how bears move throughout the landscape, and then, you know, recognizing those bears that are causing reoccurring damage. They're giving all the rest of the bears a really bad name. So, you know, people in neighborhoods think that they can positively identify unique bears, but in our trapping process, we've realized that they all look the same. I mean, there's sometimes there's distinguishing features like color or blazes on their chest. But ultimately, the ear tags help us to identify from a distance who's who and what's doing what, so we can better make better informed management decisions for those animals. So yes, 2G, this is still happening, and 2G is a huge advocate for these animals. He probably is the only person that does know individual bears, but so shout out to him. But yeah, gonna be doing it.
I love shout outs. Big shout out to 2G, and we appreciate, folks getting involved with solution. So we got another question from Mark Pat in January. Is it cool to let a bear graze on grass while you're watching? And it looks like there might have been a little bit of a typo in there, but yeah, is it okay from a distance to watch a bear graze on grass?
So it depends on what situation that you are in. So if you're hiking in the middle of nowhere, then obviously from a distance, it's okay to watch that animal behave naturally in its natural environment. If that bear is out in front of your house grazing, I would highly recommend that you make a bunch of ruckus and get that bear away from your house. Because it could be grazing on grass today, but if it accesses anything or smells anything around your house, there's a potential that it will access something. So we just want bears to be trained to fear people. We don't want them to be comfortable right in front yards and around and on decks and stuff like that. So any chance you get to give that bear a negative experience around a housing development or a neighborhood, then we highly recommend that.
Great. Great information there. And so I have a question, and then we'll just give a little bit of time if any other questions do generate here. And I'm fairly sure we can get folks out of here by about 6:30. So my question is, I know that there's limited resources within California Department of Fish and Wildlife, specifically the wardens, and as well with our public safety professionals. When would you recommend us calling the California Department of Fish and Wildlife regarding a bear interaction?
So I think it kind of depends on the level of the bear interaction. Our enforcement gets involved when it's a public safety issue. And a public safety issue is typically when a bear has made contact with a person. So just having property damage, seeing an animal, regularly in an area, we rely so heavily on local law enforcement too. When people are calling 911 and saying, hey, this bear is trying to get into my house, or this bear is in my house, we're going to be hours away from responding, where a sheriff's deputy can come in. Your local sheriff's deputies have non-lethal shotgun beanbag and I think rubber bullet rounds that they can haze an animal with. So they're giving them a negative experience, right? So that's why we try to document when local law enforcement get involved. But typically our wardens do not get involved unless it's actual contact with a person, and then they will investigate that incident. So if someone is injured, they will definitely take the lead on that. Otherwise, within my presentation, I gave you our website to report incidents, and somebody would reach out to you if you report that goes and gets emailed to our human wildlife conflict team. And then I gave you a phone number that you can call, and then I also gave you my information. So those are the types of incidents, and that's kind of the distinguishing thing between our enforcement unit and our wildlife unit. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that really did. And maybe what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my email into the chat. So if anybody attending this evening would like to reach out to me directly through email, and maybe Shelly, could you share that presentation deck with me, and I can just share that with the group so that those folks can find those numbers. I know they can be found on the website as well. I just have, looks like one question specifically for Alpine County. What is Alpine County doing to manage green waste? Specifically when it comes to, if we're talking about green waste as relation to yard clippings, pine needles, things along those lines, we do have two different options. One is the Alpine County burn pile, or also known as, it's located at TRP, where that can be dropped off. But the other locations that also exist within Douglas County is probably your closest outside of that area. And this is for Philip Bellman. Those are going to be located at Bentley and Bentley does green waste disposal, and then also the Douglas County Transfer Station. So just wanted to answer that question. And then it looks like a question for Supervisor Haynes. So I'll go ahead and get him to unmute here real quick. And the question for Supervisor Haynes is the Board of Supervisors considering an ordinance requiring VHRs to have bear boxes similar to ordinances in Tahoe and Truckee?
Yes, I think we should be considering it. Obviously, the problem is to prevent the problem before it becomes a problem. If the Airbnb people come in, they have a problem, then the next week it doesn't matter what the rules happen for the new visitor. The previous visitor has already trained the bear. So I think it's something we should consider. I'd like to not make it that prohibitive. I was really excited to hear that there's a loan to purchase or a lease to purchase, and I think we should do it. There was another question about the compost. I do think Alpine County is part of that. I think it's part of the landfill diversion program, which means we don't have a landfill in our county. Essentially, it goes east to Sparks. So I don't think we are part of that requirement. I'll check into it to make sure, so I can let people know. But we've been diverted out of many of those programs before because of the trash goes somewhere else. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so, Supervisor Haynes.
And then I had more questions for Shelley. Do you think the highway kill is being counted on the total of the bear kill for the year, the 1,700 predation or hunting permits? Do you think the bear kills added towards that or against that?
So are you asking about like hit by cars?
Yeah, hit by cars.
Yeah, so Caltrans, I have a really great working relationship with the Caltrans maintenance yard in Woodfords, and he has been really great. I've told him how important it is to kind of document the road kills. We do try to document that and try to mitigate as much as we can for that sort of thing. There's a lot of research and work going on ways to mitigate the hit by cars. Tahoe has an unprecedented amount of bears hit, unfortunately, on all of their highways. So, road signs don't really work. People just don't, it just doesn't register. So, but that data is not included in the hunter harvest. No, it's not that. So that 1,700 quota is specifically for bears that are killed by hunters that are reported. And all hunters have to present the bear head to a Fish and Game employee to have a tooth pulled. That's how we get data as well on populations and age classes. So a tooth is usually collected and sent to a lab. So, but yeah, that, every hunter is required to report and present their head, and that's the only thing that goes towards that number.
All right. So, and maybe one, I think, final question as it relates to the hunting of bears in the state of California. Obviously, there's probably a cost that those hunters pay for that tag to be able to hunt that bear. What do those funds generated off of, maybe we'll call it hunting license sales or bear tags? Where does that money go within, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife?
So the tag and hunting license money goes into a big game account. It used to be split into different species based on the types of tags, but I think a few years ago they combined everything, and so all of it goes into a big pot. And then a lot of it goes towards funding biologists, funding research that we want done in our state regarding that. There's been a big push, and technology is just getting better, like especially genetics and DNA technology. So there's been a big push throughout our state in different regions to collect DNA through hair smears and potentially through scat eventually, because that would be easier and less invasive. But to try to really get a handle on the population numbers. This is just kind of an initial thing that's happening, but I think in a few years we're really going to start pushing this type of science to get better numbers and a better idea and a sense of what's going on the landscape.
Great, thank you very much. So I'll just give, and thank you, Alex. If for everybody's edification, Alex put the rural county waiver for SB 1383 in the chat. That's the one that relates to the organic waste recycling. And the county has actually filed for that waiver for SB 1383. And the waiver doesn't require us to provide the organic waste recycling. And there's a couple of different reasons for that I can go in. If anybody has any additional questions, feel free to email me. But it is 6:31 in the respect of everybody's time. I just want to give one more opportunity if anybody has any last questions for Shelley. And while we're just waiting for those potential last ones to come in, I just want to reiterate how appreciative we are for the work that Shelley and her team does within Alpine County. You know, it's a large effort, and we're a large county, and I know we're not the only one in the state of California. And so thank you for taking care of our wildlife and educating us on how we can also do the same. So it's not seeming like we're having any other questions pop through. So again, thank you all for attending tonight. What we'll do is I'm going to take this video and we'll go ahead and get it up somewhere either on YouTube or the county's website, and we'll send out a link. So again, if you'd like to get a link to this video, if you would also like the chat, I mean, not the chat, but any additional information and the slide deck, I'm just going to put my email in the chat one more time and sending that through, making sure I actually spell it right so it actually gets routed to me. Looks like we're good there. So yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate everybody's time. Everybody have a wonderful evening. And yeah, please utilize that email. I'm just going to stay on the meeting so the chat hangs out long enough and I don't shut the meeting down on everybody, and you can copy and paste that email address. And of course, you can reach out to me with anything as it relates to Alpine County, community development, economic development, and public information. And it's been a pleasure meeting with everybody this evening. So thanks again, and everybody have a great night.
Yeah, thanks, JT. I really appreciate the opportunity. And I will send you the presentation so that you can send that out as whatever you want to do with that. So
perfect. I will send it to the far reaches of our county. We'll make sure everybody has it. So thank you again for your time. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'll just hang out too for a little bit in case there's some last minute things.
So what's anything exciting you're working on right now?
Well, we're preparing for a spring trap tag haze for bears in Tahoe area. And then I'm actually working on a mountain quail project. So that's been,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like we're good. So I'm going to go ahead and shut it down, everybody. Have a great night, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.